I'm Kevin with Springfield Leather. We've been wanting to do some instructional videos for a while, and this is going to be one of them. It's entitled How to Make a Wallet, and maybe make a little money at the same time. The reason I'm choosing this particular project is because a long time ago it helped me to open some doors that I might not have otherwise been able to get into. You see, for the most part, leather work doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be pretty good. And it has to be good enough to sell if that's your intention. And at the time, it was my intention. So I'm going to go through the steps, and along the way we'll explain some things. But first of all, I'm going to show you how in the leather world, man's best friend is a clicker press. So if you haven't seen one, you'll appreciate this, and you'll have to forgive the noise. Everybody doesn't have a clicker press. Sorry, but we do, so we use them. And it sure makes cutting things a lot faster. Now, I'm going to make 6 of them, and hopefully you'll get an idea of some of the things that can go into making a wallet a little bit easier. We're going to provide some tips and hints along the way. I think you'll enjoy it. I've got my 6 wallet backs, and I've laid them out here on this happy thick little piece of granite. And as you probably know, moisture content is one of the most important things when it comes to doing any sort of leather work, whether you're stamping or carving. The other important thing is a really heavy-duty solid surface like this granite. So if you don't have that, you need to get it, and that's just all there is to it. I'm going to get these things wet. You'll notice our finely crafted bucket made especially for holding water for other crafter, and a sponge. Actually, I'm only going to be stamping on half of these wallets, but I'm going to get the whole thing wet. That way we don't have a watermark. You're also going to see that there's not a huge amount of skill involved in doing what I'm doing. So this is something that you can do. Now I'm not sure how well you can see at this point, but if you notice the leather's already turning back to its natural color, that means it's pretty much ready to work on. The only stamps I'm going to use are 2 3D stamps, a log cabin, and a deer. And then I've got a couple of little bitty stamps, 4 of them actually. I don't know how well you can see those. One of them is the letter I from a wood alphabet set. Another one is some little bitty grass. I've got some weeds and some little bitty pine trees. So here we go. First of all, we're going to stamp a happy little deer on every one of these. I think you'll admit that's pretty simple so far. Next, we're going to stamp a little log cabin. Focusing highly on realism here. Next time you watch this, you might start your stopwatch and see just how long this takes. Small stamp. Here's what we have so far. Happy little cabin, leaping deer, and some fence posts. Okay, now, next tool. This is a little group of pine trees, which I'm sure you can't see, but here's what we're going to do. I don't know if I've mentioned this or not, but actually, I've done this before. $679,482, well, 88 times. You remember I told you leather work doesn't have to be perfect, it just has to be good enough to sell? Well, this is a pretty good example of not perfect, but it's kind of okay. Now we have happy little trees. Next, and almost last, we're going to use our swivel knife. This is a little scrap piece of leather with jeweler's rouge on it. Swivel knife has to be sharp. You probably know that already, or at least polished. So I'm going to strop it, hopefully nice and slick. Now we're going to make a wire fence. And you can see I'm using great care. 3 quick lines between the fence posts. And you know what? If you wanted to, you could have a broken fence. It's pretty simple. You just make a line there and a line there and a line there and then half a line, and then you just make a little raggedy cut and that'll be a broken one. There we go. Now we're going to make mountains. Oh, and you have to be so careful here. My goodness. You can just see that if it's not perfect, this is going to look terrible. These mountains are an exacting science. About as exacting as Bob Ross was with his happy little trees and everything else. But this works out okay. And believe it or not, we have sold a tremendous amount of these wallets over the years, both wholesale and retail. And so now we've got, let's see, a deer jumping over a fence, a deer jumping over a broken fence, some nice little mountains and trees in the background, and I'm going to do one more thing. Finesse, if you will. This is a little bitty stamp that makes grass. I'm going to stamp it at the base of each of the fence posts. Now you can tell that as I do this, you have to be precise. You really can't do this if you're not paying attention to what you're doing. If you don't pay attention to what you're doing, you could be stamping over, well, other impressions and who knows what. But you know, and I'm doing every one of these exactly the same. And I have some oceanfront property in Arizona. Okay. There's two. They're good enough. They're done, with the exception of staining them. Now, that's going to come in a minute. Okay. We're going to stain these. I'm just going to stain one for now. And if I was really doing this to make money right now, rather than just show you how to do this, I'd be using an airbrush to spray a border around this. But, hey, not everybody has an airbrush. So I'm going to do it the way I started out doing it. This is a sponge.
What kind of place is this?
I went to Dollar General and I got nothing but the best. This is a top-of-the-line sponge. It's really known for its ability to suck up stuff. This is Phoebing's chocolate dye in a bottle. It's way too big. I put just enough dye on that sponge to help me get in trouble. And before I put it on that leather, I'm going to take this old piece of cardboard and I'm going to get a lot of that extra dye off of there. Quite a bit of it, actually. Then I'm going to take, I don't know how well you can see this, I'm going to put a border on here, just a little bit at a time. It's going to be quite a bit darker. I'm just going to go around the edges, maybe hit the corners a little extra. You can also do this same thing by wrapping an old t-shirt or a piece of t-shirt around a block of wood. That works pretty well also. So we're going to extend that border out into the picture a little bit. Not a tremendous amount, but it kind of fades this way. And you can see that a little bit of dye goes quite a ways. And I don't know if you noticed, but our leather was completely dry from the tooling and the stamping. So there are little tricks and little things that you can do and get away with if you feel that you need to. For me, at the time when I was making these, it was all about being able to save time and less clumsy. There's so little dye on our sponge now that we can actually rub it over the leather and just get a pleasant antiquing look. Okay, here's what we have so far. Next, we're going to use a different product. And by the way, I committed an unforgivable sin. I used this dye and I didn't put the bottle on, or the lid on it. Bad. I'm going to reach across the camera and grab some other dye. This is called highlighter. Highlighter is one of my favorite products. You practically can't screw it up. That's why I like it. I'm going back to my professional water container, getting my sponge. I'm going to squeeze just about all the water out of it that I can. And actually, I'm going to switch sponges. Using the other half of my Dollar General sponge, I get almost all the water out, and then I'm going to put some highlighter on this sponge. Then I want to rub it on the leather. Now, it's pretty hard to get too much on here. If you do get too much on there, just wipe it off. Works out really good. Some people would prefer just to pour their highlighter directly on the wallet. And maybe they'll use a finger. That works. You can really work it down into the stamped areas. You can really make it look pretty neat. Then take your sponge and just wipe off whatever you don't want on there. Work it in to the degree that you want it worked in. Now, cleaning it up just a little bit, use a clean part of your sponge. Oh, there's a little tree that didn't get any down in there. Well, it's got it in it now. Things are a lot more visible now, aren't they? Actually, that don't look too bad. Point is, it looks good enough to where when it's put onto the interior of a wallet and laced up, it looks good enough for somebody to buy it. And that's a nice thing. It also makes a great gift, something you can give away and somebody will be happy to get it. So let's see. Next. Last step. Well, pretty much. Now normally, you would never put a finish on there until this is dry. But there's some things you can get away with. This particular product doesn't take a long time to dry. And maybe it's not perfectly dry, but it's pretty close. I'm going to take a little bit of Phoebing saddle lac. And what we would do in a prior life, we would lay out 25, 30, maybe 50 of these wallet backs on a big old sheet of cardboard out in our driveway, and we just walk along with a can of saddle lac and do this. Light coats, done. The only thing that remains is to attach it to the wallet parts and lace it up. So far, it's pretty easy. You know, one of the nice things I like about this is that if instead of that deer, you just stamp a horse right there, you've got a wallet that appeals to a whole different customer base. And that's kind of nice. Okay, we're going to assemble our wallet. Now, if you wish, you can cut all those wallet parts out and sew them together or glue them together, or whatever you're going to do. For simplicity of this video, we've already cut out our interior parts and sewn them together. So we're ready to go. This is a 4-pocket deluxe interior. The first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to make sure that whoever glued this thing together leaves this center part movable. It has to be movable. You see, they had a little bit of glue in there to where it wouldn't move. But now it does. It slides back and forth. And you need your interior to be able to do that. Next, I have a bill divider. And I have a top strip. What I'm going to do is take some contact cement, and I'm going to make sure that I'm not working with too much at once. So I'm going to get the excess glue off of this brush before I start flailing it around. First thing I'm going to do, put glue just on the edges of this wallet. Now I'll tell you a tip. When you're doing this, don't get heavy-handed with the glue, because you will see as we lace this thing up a little later, if you've got this thing glued together so that a truck couldn't pull it apart, it's going to make your life miserable when it comes to splicing. Make sure you keep track of where the bottom of your wallet is. I like to have the bottom of the wallet back facing me. We'll take a little more glue, and I'm going to put some glue on the insides of the wallet interior, all the way around the bottom and side edges. I am also going to put just a little bit of glue, just enough to kind of hold things down around the edge. Not enough to really accomplish much other than just hold those pocket edges down. and that will do that. Then I'm going to put some glue on the bottom tab of the bill divider and across the top of this little top strip. And again, be careful, you just don't want too much. Next, now that our glue has gotten just a little bit tacky, I'm going to lay the wallet strip right down on there, lay it across the top. I'm going to take the bill divider, center it on the bottom of the wallet, sort of kind of halfway a little bit, glue that. I'm going to take the wallet interior, lay it down there, line it up, push it down on the edges best I can. Sometimes you have to fold the back of the wallet up just a little bit. That's okay, because that wallet inside will move, allowing you to do this. And there. Now we have the interior of our wallet on there. We've got a bill divider which can serve as a hidden pocket if we wish to cover it with the top strip, and we're ready to lace it up. Looks pretty good so far. Okay. Putting holes to enable you to do your lacing of your wallet in a piece of leather is not a difficult thing, but there's a couple things that's kind of handy to know. First of all, if you're going to be lacing around a corner, sharp corner, I like to use a round hole there. So I'm using a spring punch. I'm just going to make a nice little hole right there, and another one in that corner, and in that corner, and you guessed it, that corner too. 4 holes, 1 in each corner. Maybe you notice there's a little extra leather out here. It's not too tough to deal with. Trim it up. Matter of fact, any extra leather that you might have and where you didn't do such a good job of gluing, just trim it up. It'll be fine. I'm lazy. I use an 8-prong chisel. You can use a 4-prong or a 3 or whatever you have. It all works. You can even punch single holes if you want to, but like I said, I'm lazy. You remember sharpening the swivel knife? Same thing is good for the swivel. I'm sorry, for the chisel. Now, with the chisel, if it is polished and slick, boy, it makes such a huge difference in the ease of your punching holes that it's not even funny. If you haven't ever done this, you should do it, because it makes a big, big difference. I'm going to start at the top, and I'm going to probably be about 3/16 in from the edge. Go all the way around. And boy, is this chisel coming out of this leather really, really easy. Now again, I'm punching on the bed of a clicker press. This thing is massive. It weighs a ton, and it provides just about the ultimate solid pounding surface. Anyway, as I was saying, this clicker bed really makes for a great pounding surface. If you don't have one, which is probably pretty obvious that you don't, take a poundo board or hard rubber surface, or even a cutting pad that you might buy from Walmart, a poly type of cutting pad, set it on top of your block of marble and you can use it. Now, one other thing that I didn't mention was when you're punching these holes, it's pretty smart to put the last prong of your punch in the last hole that you just punched. That keeps things nice and straight, and that's happy. Go across the top, and you probably notice that this chisel just pops out of this leather. That's because it's polished. It just goes in there and comes right back out. You also may have noticed I'm only using one chisel. I don't need a single chisel to make up spacing. You can go around a wallet using whatever size chisel that you want, as long as you just keep an eye to where you're going. And if you're in doubt, just lay your tool on there, see how things are going to space out, and make it work. It's not difficult at all. Okay, now we've got our wallet all ready to lace. We're going to start lacing. Well, we're ready to lace. We have our happy little wallet. And we have some little 3/32 lacing that I'm going to use to lace this up with. Now, I like to lace with kangaroo lace. That's the most expensive kind there is, and don't feel obligated to do that. But the reason I like it is because it's soft and strong, and it's just easy, and I'm basically lazy. I also don't like to lace with any more than about a yard and a half of lace. And there's a good reason for that. It goes a lot faster. If you sit and pull 7 or 8 yards of lace through every single hole on a wallet, you wear the lace out before you get done, or at least you can. Now, I use a little 2-prong lacing needle, which I'm sure you can't see, but if you're lacing, you know what this is. Some people like the little needles that screw on, some people like the kind that have the eye in the end of it. That's fine, whatever you like. I just happen to like this. I'm going to take my scissors and cut this lace off to a little bitty point. I'm going to pry open this little needle and stick that lace right in there. And this may be a little challenging for some, but you'll get it if you work on it. It's easiest to take a mallet hammer, the handle of it, and just kind of squish it down. But I used my scissors, tapped it, and I'm good to go. Now, to start lacing, we're going to change position of the camera here so you can see what I'm doing. First of all, when you're lacing a wallet, you always lace with the face of your project looking at your face. And you always lace from left to right. Now I'm going to turn my wallet over because when I'm lacing a wallet, I always start right here, about 1.5 inches from the left end. There's a couple of little tricks that it's helpful to know. First of all, you can see I pushed this needle through a hole, doesn't matter which one, and we're going to just work it through there. Pull it through to where you've got, maybe 1 inch or so left over. The trick to lacing is to never let go of this needle. I'm going to turn it over in my hand and go through the next hole. And I'll tell you a little bit more as we go. Keep this loop out of the way, and the first lace that we do is going to be over the top of that little end. Got a little twist in the lace. Okay, see that? There we are. We're going to pull it up tight. Then you'll notice I'm hanging onto the needle. I'm going to turn it over and go through that right underneath that little place where the lace is crossed over. And I'm going to keep this loop over in front of me. Never let go of that needle. You have other fingers. Use those to pull this lace through there. And you'll notice that it's going to start getting easier and easier and easier. This time we didn't go over that little tail. We just went right beside it. Now from here on, you may have to review that start a few times, but from here on, this is nothing but going through the hole through the X, through the hole through the X, through the hole through the X, and I'll show you what I mean. Flipping the needle over through the next hole, keep your lace over in front of you, pull it up. Look how nice that goes with that nice smooth kangaroo lace. Never let go. Turn it over so that the lace is making a big loop. Go right underneath both of those laces. The lace will make an X. You need to go underneath the X. If you only go underneath one of them, that's called single loop stitching. And that's not what I want to do. I'm doing a double loop stitch. So make sure you go underneath both pieces of lace. Just pull it snug. You don't have to pull it tight. Next, we went through the X, so now we go through the hole. Underneath the X, now that we've gone through a hole, and here we go. We're going through the X, through a hole, through the X, through a hole, through the X, and through a hole. Now, as I'm going along, you'll notice it goes pretty fast. One of the reasons it goes pretty fast is because we're just lacing with a short piece of lace. You can cut your lacing time down by half compared to using a piece of lace that was long enough to do this whole thing all at once. So we're just happily going along. Now I pulled enough lace off of that spool to get across this little area at the bottom of the wallet. I want to get across there so I can easily splice. And we're going to show you splicing here in a minute. You probably notice how every little bit I just use my fingers to untwist the lace, and you notice that we're going from left to right. Now, here's a trick. When you get to this point, it's a good idea to go back and undo the first couple of stitches. I pulled that little lace out, pulled it out from the back. I'm going to pull it out of this little loop. Hopefully you can see the little loop that I just pulled this lace out of. Then I'm going to use either a modeling tool or my needle, and I'm going to reach around to the back, and I'm just going to loosen this a little bit. I'm going to pull this little piece of lace back through the hole a little bit. That allows me to take this loop and open it up and make it just a little bit bigger. And now it'll be easier to see when you have your own project in your hand. But this loop right here is the same size as every loop that we've created by doing this lacing. So here we go. And you notice I never let go of the needle. We're going back to this through the hole, through the X thing. We're going to go through the hole, and through the X. Through the hole. Whoops, dropped my needle. Whenever you do that, make sure you straighten it out. Here's one of the most common mistakes a first time or a novice lacer will do. They pull it up tight, and then rather than turn this needle over, they do this. They pull it around and they go through. That will, without fail, twist your lace. If you're in doubt, straighten it out, turn the needle over, through the hole, through the X, through the hole, through the X. Just keep remembering. Check yourself every now and then. If something doesn't look right, you can always take this needle off and pull the lace back, and you may have to do that a time or two, but it won't be the end of the world. Just remember, turn the needle over in your fingers. Big loop. Loops are happy. Twisted lace is not happy. It's pretty tough to make money on a wallet that's laced.
Speed department, could you page 103? Speed department 103.
But you can do it. And lacing with kangaroo lace is kind of nice because that's something that adds value to the finished product. At least it can to the right customers. Now we're getting to the point where splicing is coming up. You're not going to believe how easy it is to splice if you don't know. We're just going to get up here to where we've only got a few more holes to take care of. And then we'll begin our splice. A lot of people think that you have to cut the lace off and shave down the ends of the lace and glue it together with glue, and there's times when you have to do that, but this is not one of them. Okay, we're getting down to the end. I'll leave a little extra lace instead of taking that last stitch. When we're going through the hole, what you do is you kind of take your needle and you get down in between the leathers here, and you just kind of work that apart to where you've got a gap, a space between your wallet insides and your wallet back. Now, if you'll remember earlier, we told you to not get glue happy when you glued the interior. This is the reason why. Now we go through the hole, but instead of going all the way through, we're coming up between the leathers. Pull it up nice and snug. Take the scissors. We're going to cut off so that there's 3/8 of an inch sticking up. And here's what we're going to do. Again, we're going to just widen out that gap a little bit, and I'm going to stick that piece of lace right down inside. Doesn't even look like it was ever there, does it? Now, I've attached another piece of lace to my needle. I'm ready to go. Here's how easy splicing is. You remember we went through this hole and up between the leathers. Well, now we're going to go down between the leathers, and we're going to go out the hole that we should have come out of if we wouldn't have had to splice. So here we are, pulling that leather right down through the leathers and out the back side of the wallet, and there we are, got about 3/8 sticking up. Turn my needle over, and I'm going to hide that little leather end somewhat down in the leathers. All gone. Looks like we never stopped, doesn't it? So all we do is take up where we left off. We just came out of a hole, so we go through the X. Look at that. Doesn't even look like we spliced. It's perfect. Sort of perfect. Through the X. And always remember, the biggest thing is just make sure you turn your needle over every single time. Now that method of splicing is good. It'll never come apart. Never. It's much better than glue, much more secure, less hassle. It just works better, and it allows you to go faster. Now we're going to come up to a corner here in a minute. And there's a couple of ways that you can handle going through a corner. Maybe you remember that when we punched our lacing holes, the majority of them were done with the chisel. But on the corner, we went through the corner with a round hole punch, a little plier punch. And actually, I probably could have used a little bit bigger round hole punch than I did, but this is okay. The reason that we used a round hole punch on the corner instead of a chisel is because on the corners it's helpful if you go through that corner hole more than once. Now there's several ways you can do this. You can go through the hole in front of the corner twice, or you can go through the corner hole 2 or 3 times. You can go through the hole in front of the corner twice, the hole after the corner twice. There's a lot of things you can do, but your lacing style never changes. Just going through the hole, through the X every single time. I'm just going to go through this hole prior to the corner one time. Now I'm going through the corner. Went through there. Now I'm going through the X. I'm going to go through the corner again. And it's easier because of the roundness of that hole. Now, you got to be careful when you've done that. You got to search out that X. You just go through the X that you just made. Okay, we're pulling it up tight. Now this time, I'm going to go through that corner one more time, I think. And you may have to work it a little bit, because that'll be kind of tight. But now, your lace has gone all the way around the corner. Go through that X we just made. And now it'll look correct. Now we start up lacing normally again, through the hole, through the X, through the hole, and through the X. Easy, easy. Now one more trick. When you're lacing, it's very easy to forget to move this loop out of the way like that. If you don't do that, and you let go of your needle right here, which you have to do, and then you reach inside the loop and pull this out through it, you're going to have a mess. You'll have to take it back out. So in addition to always turning your needle over, like we showed you, always keep this loop out of the way. And speaking of loops, you cannot imagine the loop that you get when you're lacing with 7 yards of lace. And you could strangle a cat with that much lace. So just keep your hank of lace short. Develop a rhythm if you can. Develop a habit. Turning that needle over, and learn to work with the if you're right-handed, learn to work a little bit with the fingers of your left hand, because that's what helps this lace stay nice and straight. So that's pretty much it. Now what I'm going to do is go all the way around the rest of this wallet, and I'm going to do it in about 20 seconds. And if you don't believe me, just watch the next scene, and then we'll be ready to end the lacing. Don't blink. Okay, now we're ready to end, to finish up. And if you recall, I told you I could lace a wallet in 20 seconds. Well, here it is, living proof. Now, we've gone all the way around the final corner, and we're coming up to where we started. So here's what we do. Take a modeling tool, or your needle, if that'll work, some kind of pointy thing. And you remember this little tail of lace that we started out with? We're going to reach down in between the leathers, and we're going to get that out of there. We're going to pull it up. There. Now what we're going to do, we're going to make this loop the same size as all the rest of these loops that we've formed as we've gone through the lacing process. So I'm going to stick my modeling tool in there, kind of pull a little bit. Well, that's a little too big now. I'm going to make it a little smaller just by pulling on this lace a little bit. You work it with your fingers. That's pretty good. Now, I'm going to cut it off pretty darn close to the edge of the leather. Then we're going to take our lacing, straighten it out, just lace like normal, through the hole, through the X. We're going to go right up to where we started. And when we get to the next to the last hole, that's when stuff starts to happen differently. A little twist there. Okay. Now, this time, we're going through the next to the last hole. Straighten out our lace. Normally we should just go right underneath the X that we created, but we're going to take a little detour. We're going to come up through this loop that we created from the back side. We're going to pull it up, but we're going to leave it kind of loose. Then we're going to do what we should have done, which is go underneath that X. We're going to pull it up, not very tight at all. We're going to leave it loose. Then we're going to lay this loop down. And what we're going to do is go right underneath that lace, down through the loop from the front. Hopefully you can see that okay. If you just remember, when you get to when you've gone through the next to the last hole, you come up through the loop from the back, go underneath the X, down through the loop from the front. You pull it, make sure you don't get your lace twisted till it looks about like this. Then what you do is you start just working it up tight, one lace at a time. Pull it all up nice and snug. Poof! It looks like you never stopped. Then you go through the last hole, but you don't go all the way through. You go through the hole and you kind of wiggle your needle and you come off up between the leathers a little ways down. Pull it up just nice and snug. Cut it. And you're almost done. There's only one thing left to do, and we're just going to turn around right over here and go back to our marble slab. Once we're by our granite slab, the last thing we're going to do is seat the lace. We just set the lace on the granite. Take out some of your aggressions. Just tap the lace and seat it. Voila, or wallet. Done. Thanks for watching.